I brought a chart today.
And tell us what it shows us.
The basic point here is that Donald Trump has said that he's the only one who can fix the tax system. He's the only one who can solve the problem that allows someone like him to pay no taxes for who knows how many years. But yet the tax plan that he's put forward would actually give him a huge tax break. And so, this is sort of the bottom line, and then I can explain where it comes from. But this basically takes incomes from people at the bottom all the way over on the left in the 0 to 10% of the population, moves toward the middle class in the 40 to 60%, and then moves all the way over to the wealthy. And you can see in the red that while Donald Trump is essentially accurate when he says he's going to give middle class and lower income people a tax break, although there's some asterisks around that, it's really small compared to the size of the tax break that he would give people over on the right, going all the way to the famous 1%, who, depending upon how you interpret one of his business tax proposals that he's refused to clarify, it could be anywhere from the 10 to 16% range for that group of folks. And then those little two blue bars at the bottom are Hillary Clinton's tax plan, which would raise taxes only on people very near the top.
Yes, so those are actually in the negatives there.
Yes,
that's more taxes for the people
more
at the top.
taxes, but only for people at the very top. And so the point is, and then there are other features of his tax plan, for example, eliminating the estate tax, which is roughly 40%. If you actually believe he's worth $10 billion, that saves him $4 billion, and so forth. And so he has basically, instead of closing these loopholes and changing the law the way he says he would do, his plan actually would give people like him a huge tax break, much bigger than anyone else would get.
And certainly not simplify, as far as we know, the tax code.
Well, it's interesting about both proposals that neither of them has actually proposed tax simplification or tax reform in the basic sense. And it may simply be because this is a campaign, and when you actually get to legislating, they'll start to deal with some of these loopholes. But for the moment, what you're basically seeing are simply changes in rates, and then other things like eliminating the state tax, massive cut on tax for business by Trump, things like that.
Now, if Mr. Trump were here, I suspect what he would say is, that's all fine and good, but all those red bars really are stimulus for the economy. If we do that, we're going to grow the economy, and actually we'll all be better off.
All those red bars add up to about $5.8 trillion of tax cuts over the next 10 years. Tax cuts that those of us who do believe that there's still some relevance to the budget deficit and the amount of debt that we're piling up would really blow a hole in the budget. So sure, they would stimulate the economy, they would create inflation, they would create higher interest rates, and ultimately they'd create a huge amount of additional debt. And he has not really specified in any credible way how he would offset the cost of those tax cuts.
But it would be a form of fiscal stimulus that people are calling for. They're saying monetary's gone far enough, we need fiscal.
Well, first of all, people are calling for fiscal stimulus targeted in the right places, like infrastructure, like rebuilding our investment in R&D and in education, things like that. Secondly, I think the smart people are saying, let's have a budget plan that's stimulus in the short term, coupled with long-term reform, particularly the entitlements program, so that the out-year deficits don't get too large. That's not what this is. This is simply a massive 10-year tax cut.
So we just had a discussion with Doug Holtz-Eakin, who advised McCain. You, of course, support Hillary Clinton about this brouhaha about the tax returns, and Warren Buffett coming out and saying, here's my tax return. From what you know, Steve, is this a real issue in the campaign, or is it just sort of a sideshow?
I think the Trump people have actually done a pretty good job of making it into a little bit of a sideshow, because when you say to someone, I'm simply taking the deductions I'm allowed to under the law, who's going to disagree with that? Do you take all the deductions you're allowed in the law? Do you? Do you? What's the answer, John?
Steve
Yes.
Rattner. You're going to put me on the spot about my taxes?
And I do. And I do. And so people, I think, understand that. What I don't think, because of all the hoopla about tapes and emails and transcripts that has gotten enough attention, is the fact that Trump isn't even proposing to fix the problem. He's saying, okay, there's a problem. I took advantage of it. I know how to fix it. But I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to make it worse.
Even make it a bigger problem.
Make it a bigger problem. That's his proposal.
Yeah, but it appeals to a lot of his base.
Well, the idea of tax cuts is a kind of pretty irresponsible political tactic that does appeal to a certain number of people. But not to get off economics and onto Trump, you know, if you look at the polls at the moment, it feels like he's consolidated his support around his base, but it does not feel like anybody outside of that group is heading his way.
Okay, thanks very much. That's Steve Rattner. He's chairman of Willett Advisors. Just as, again, a disclaimer, Willett Advisor is the investment manager for Michael R. Bloomberg's personal and philanthropic assets.